Hi, everybody. I hope you guys can hear me okay. Let me know if not. Um, who have we got today? I can only see one of the people that are in. I can see Tracy. Thanks for joining, Tracy. How are you? Feel free to say hi in the chat. It's actually, so it's nighttime where I am, obviously, other side of the world. But what time is it where you are? So I think I start a minute or two later. So I feel like we've probably got a couple of people that are expecting to join in a few minutes' time. It's 8 a.m. Wow, it's 9 p.m. here. So yeah, is that I think 13 hours ahead. But yeah, I kind of end my days doing these lives. Um, is this your first time at one of my sessions, Tracy? Because I do recognize you, but I don't know if it's from other people's lives or from mine. We've got a few other people who've joined. So we've got Diana. Oh, you're a teacher here. Cool. I'm not sure if I've been to any of your sessions yet, Diana, but if anyone doesn't know Diana, I'm going to give you a follow as well right now. But please give Diana a follow. And Diana, I don't think I've seen you at any of my sessions before, but I imagine all of the teachers here kind of know each other and are quite friendly. So I've probably been in other people's live sessions with you. So today, obviously, I've prepared a couple of things. So hopefully we'll get a good group of people, and I'll kind of do little recaps as we go along as well. So just for kind of Diana and Tracy, and I can see there's other people in the room, but I can't see who they are. So please feel free to say hi, let me know where you are. But typically my lives involve talking about what we can do to build more community and authentic, meaningful connection in our lives. So I kind of obviously have covered before in some of my recorded tracks and also other live sessions. The state of things at the moment is that the world is a lonelier and more isolated place than it's ever been before. And we have the illusion of connection through things like our phones. Obviously, Insight Timer, I think, is an exception to that, where it's actually a realistic, lovely way to connect with people online. But for the most part, there's a lot of like noise through social media, but it's not actually authentic human connection. And even so, the element of connecting with people remotely, I think there is value for in it for a lot of people, especially where you can connect to people where you otherwise might not be able to. So for example, people who have health conditions that mean that they need to protect their immunity and they need to stay in the house. Also for people who maybe are immobile or can't get around as much, or people who are hospitalized, for example. So I think the digital world and being able to connect in that way provides something really lovely, and there is value in it, but I think it can't entirely replace face-to-face connection, being able to give someone a hug and sit down and share some food or a cup of tea. So that's kind of why I do what I'm doing. And I think there's a few things that I heard about today as well, which I'm going to look up and discover with you guys. But I had a conversation with somebody today who told me about an app or a platform called Read with Audrey. Has anybody heard of this? I'm going to be looking it up myself, and I'll share with you guys what that is. But from the way it's described, it sounds like a really lovely way through. It's kind of reading aloud, but you're kind of connected with people to be able to do that. And I don't entirely know how it works, but from the person that was describing it to me, it sounded like a really beautiful, really lovely, really positive thing. And yeah, so that's kind of my story, what I talk about typically, and where the kind of spaces that I sort of am interested in. But we often go off on tangents. We've done sessions about kind of roadblocks to connection, ways to improve communication and deepen relationships, and we've played a couple of sort of games with the group as part of that as well. We've also talked about kind of the psychology of connection and what holds us back and how we can bring more of it into our lives, and things to do with how, like, actually on a practical level, day to day, you can actually change the way you're showing up in the world, the way you're interacting. Something as simple as when you go to a class or an event, go early and try to connect with people, or chat to people while you're waiting around for it to start. similarly stay a little bit longer. And that's a really great way to connect with people who are like-minded and kind of in the same spaces or doing the same things as you. So that's kind of just a little overall view for anyone that hasn't been to any of my sessions before. And today we're talking about a topic that is really dear to my heart because it's something I'm learning a lot about as we speak about it, but also something that I think, a lot of teachers talk about it on here. And also for myself, it's something that I'm very much trying to get better at. So, and that topic is, of course, which I'm sure we can all relate to, is changing our perspectives and our outlook and our mindset and maybe how we show up to alleviate suffering and prevent it as well. Hi, Lauren. Lovely to see you. Right on time. I was just launching into the topic for today. So ultimately, one of the things that I'm really starting to learn and, completely grasp, and I've covered this in previous sessions, is I'm reading a book by Dr. Joe Dispenza, and one of the things that he says that has really resonated with me and really stuck with me, and I think is slowly changing the way my operating system works, as he would say, is that I didn't fully I kind of understood this, but not in these terms. So basically, the way that we show up as humans and the way that we quite often exist and interact, we're sometimes triggered by things, or we have extreme reactions to things, or we're scared or worrying or hurt or fearful about things that happen in our lives that actually aren't immediate dangers. So, if you have a difficult conversation with like a colleague or your boss or something like that, you feel under threat, and our body can't distinguish between like real and perceived threats. So our body responds in the same way as if there was like a lion ready to, take a chunk out of us. And that isn't a helpful or effective way for us to live or exist. So one of the kind of big things that differentiates us from other animals in the animal kingdom is the fact that animals, let's say there was a deer grazing, and I've talked about this before, I've read a paragraph from one of Joe Dispenza's books around this. If there's a deer grazing and a gazelle, not a gazelle, if like a lion came to try and attack it, that deer would be pumped with adrenaline, cortisol, it would run, it would, all of its energy would go into escaping and fleeing that danger. And two things happen when that occurs. First of all, that energy is used up because the deer actually uses that energy to physically escape and get out of that situation. And so that, brings their regulation back down again. But secondly, the way we differ from other animals in that way is that we, like the deer, will just kind of go back to grazing as soon as it's out of danger, and it won't think about it a week or a month or an hour later. It just kind of knows it's safe and it will move on. Whereas we don't do that. So we're the only animal, from what we can tell, where we can trigger those stress responses in our body from thought alone. So, if you, and I don't want you guys to do this because I don't want to put you in that headspace, but if you reflect on times where you've had a difficult situation or a challenge or a conflict or something like that in your lives, and then you've reflected on it later, or you've retold the story, or you've kind of thought about it again, you end up feeling like angry or stressed or upset all over again. And I've certainly had that happen, and I've experienced that, and I'm sure many of us have, right? Like, send up some hearts if you can relate to that. But after something's happened and you're no longer in that situation, it still bothers you, or you still think about it, or it stresses you out. And that's kind of the one thing that differentiates us, is that the other animals can switch off their mind in that sense. We can't, at least not, at a subconscious, easy level. And there are things that we can do to help ourselves on that front. But that brought me on to this topic of actually a lot of our suffering. Obviously, there is suffering that exists. Things happen to us, and there are real tangible reasons. I'm not kind of undermining anyone's pain or suffering, but what I've learned personally in my own life, and what I'm interested in, is the ways that we can eliminate or prevent or moderate that suffering where it is preventable and unnecessary, and where actually we could probably do without it. So that's what we're here to talk about today. And if anyone has any examples of a situation where they've caused unnecessary suffering for themselves, please share. If you've got any questions or anything that us as a group that we can support you on or give you a fresh perspective on, please do. People have done that quite a lot before. In our sessions, we have had people ask, "Oh, hi, Mel. Lovely to have you here. Don't worry about being late. I'm just doing the little preamble, the intro, but Mel's one of my regulars, as is Lauren, or Peterbrook as she's known. So yeah, everybody, and this is just kind of a nice space. Everybody's welcome here to kind of hang out and have a nice time. You can answer any questions. There's no stupid questions, and engage as much or as little as you'd like to. But it's always nice for me to get to know some of you or to hear your perspectives as well, because there's a lot of times where you guys will share something that will lead us in a interesting or different direction. But yeah, we're basically here to talk about how can we prevent preventable suffering, and how can we sort of improve our headspace, mindset, and spend less time in pain or in a state of suffering where it's possible for us to sort of improve that for ourselves. I don't want to say snap out of it, but that's because I think I would personally not like someone to say that to me. So I've done a little bit of homework, and and it's a kind of, we've got a good list of things ahead that we're going to chat through. But ultimately, you know, how the perspective we have on our suffering can greatly affect. Yes, Mel, I'm feeling so much better. So for those of you who don't know, the last couple of weeks I've had a bit of a cold. But Mel, you can probably hear it in my voice as well. I'm definitely doing a lot better. And yeah, so and how are you guys doing? I hope everybody else is well. I know there's a lot of like cold and flu and COVID and whatnot passing around at the moment. So the perspective that we have on things that happen to us, you know, situations, life events, and the amount that we kind of dwell on it, the power we give it, the more we talk about it and go over things, that obviously can make it better or worse for us. And I've experienced that loads. Sometimes there's situations where, let's say, I have like a disagreement, and then I'll talk to somebody else about that situation or that story, and I'll end up feeling worse about it and going over it again and giving it more energy than the energy that was already expended in the situation itself. And I'm trying really hard not to do that, and somewhat succeeding. Another thing that I'm really learning to do is, in situations where I would previously be triggered and I know the way that conversation is going to go. So if someone shares something with me that they know will kind of provoke a certain response, and I can I can kind of avoid responding because it's not worth it, then I'll kind of just skim over it and move on, just for my own sanity, and that's working quite well because I'm seeing the value in it now, and I'm saying, you know, seeing that I don't always have to say the first thing that comes to mind or like react instead of respond. And the more we kind of take these baby steps and sort of rewire those pathways, the easier it is to do it. So yeah, there's a lot of, so basically, you know, some people do experience greater suffering than others. And partly that's to do with, you know, situations that happen to us, but also it's very much to do with a range of other things that actually we can control. And, you know, you see this time and time again where you'll see people that have the same situation happen to two different people. So, for example, there's someone I met many years ago who had lost one of her limbs, and she went on to kind of run marathons and just sort of really take that in her stride. Excuse the pun. But then you get people who would be in victim mode and would say, "Oh, this thing happened to me. Like, I can't do anything." So, and we see this over and over, that people take circumstances that happen to them very differently, and they, you know, what comes out of it is really down to kind of what happens next, what you do with that. I'm just gonna put that down. Yeah. So basically, the kind of notes that I made is, so what is less certain is how the suffering will affect us. So, you know, things happen in our lives and we can't necessarily change them, or quite often they're things outside of our control, but we do have autonomy, and some control over other areas as well. So, you know, a few things that can affect us is our beliefs. So what we believe about the world, what we believe about the universe, and whether you believe there's a greater force than us, for example. If you believe that actually, oh, I always have a bad day, that I'm in scarcity mindset, life has to be a struggle, typically you get what you expect, because our minds try to make things make sense. We look for patterns, and that is what you'll notice and what you'll focus on more, and that will perpetuate. Similarly, if you are a positive person and you believe that people are friendly, then generally speaking, you'll be warmer and more friendly to other people, and you'll get the same energy back. And our natural response is another thing that can influence how suffering affects us. So our natural response quite often is fear, insecurity, having a bit of a grumble, being a little bit, I guess sad, or demotivated isn't the word I'm looking for. What's the word I'm looking for? It's something, but kind of I can't think of it. But ultimately, where you're disheartened. That's the word I'm looking for. That's a very natural response. Yeah. So demotivated as well, but I think disheartened was the word that I was trying to land on. And our worldview overall. So our belief, our natural response, our worldview are just some of the things that affect how we deal with difficult situations, stress, suffering. So there's good news. There's light at the end of the tunnel. So I don't know how many of you are familiar with a Buddhist American nun called, and I might pronounce this wrong, so please tell me if I am, or forgive me if I am. Pema Chodron, I think I'm saying that right. So she said, it isn't the things that happen to us in our lives that cause us to suffer. It's how we relate to the things that happen to us that causes us to suffer. So if anyone wants me to repeat that, let me know. But I think that's quite profound and quite important. So it's not what happens to us that causes the suffering, it's how we relate to those things. And I guess also what we do next, where we go from there. And there's another quote which okay, Tracy, I'll repeat it for you. So this is from Pema Chodron. It isn't the things that happen to us in our lives that cause us to suffer. It's how we relate to the things that happen to us that cause us to suffer. So it's not about what happens to us, it's how we react or respond or relate to those things and what they mean to us, right? The meaning we attach. I have a very noisy guinea pig who's, I think, bashing things around over there. I don't know whether you guys can hear that, but I think it's Pumpkin. He's the most boisterous, and obviously it's Halloween tomorrow, so it's very much pumpkin season. Although my sister and I were talking about, so Bear, the little black guinea pig, he looks he's got like a very Halloweeny look to him, just because he's just jet black, and a very cute little thing. And so another quote that I have, and I don't know who this is by, I didn't look it up because I kind of was focused on finding other things for this session, but I figured also that one of you would know the answer to this. So there's a quote that says, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So I'll repeat that. Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. Now, we're probably going to have people on here that say that pain is optional as well. There's people who think that, okay, well, with like mindset and hypnotherapy or whatever else, that pain's optional as well. But this is the case of this quote. It's pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. What I kind of personally take that to mean is that painful things and difficult things and curveballs. Why am I saying curveballs weirdly? Anyway, that they're always gonna happen, but we can choose the degree of suffering that follows from them. And ultimately, what both of these quotes kind of steer us towards, and what they mean, and the good news here, for me at least, is that we all have the potential or the option to change how we perceive the things and the situations that hurt us or upset us. So I've been like researching ways that we can change our perspective and how we can alleviate suffering and stuff. So I've got a little list to run us through. But there was one particular blog post that I was reading, and I would like to credit this person because I think the way she framed it was really lovely, and it felt very sort of personal. And her name is Harinder Katora. That's Ghatora. And she does kind of holistic life coaching. I'd never heard of her before, but I just found this article amongst my research and I really liked it and I thought it was positive. And, if I share anything that's from a particular person, I want to make sure that I'm giving them a shout out. I just think that's a nice thing to do. So one of the first things that she said that she does when she's experiencing suffering and, maybe having a hard time with it, is she said that she remembers past experiences. So she said, I've been through some dark emotional times when I was younger. And quite frankly, nothing I'm experiencing now even comes close to how I felt back then. When I look back, I gain confidence in my ability to deal with the present situation because I know I've been through far worse. That instantly makes me feel better. So I think I can definitely relate to that for many reasons. I think I have definitely dealt with a lot worse kind of situations in the past than in the present day. But more than that, I feel that now I'm at a point in my life where, we're all here because we believe in personal development. We're kind of putting in the effort and the work and wanting to kind of do and be better, right? So I feel that I have the most tools, the most experience, the most perspective, the most kind of support, both inside and outside of myself, that I've ever had at any point in time. And so that makes me feel like, compared to past experiences, I'm better equipped. And also just, I think the experiences that I'm having now are not as objectively painful or difficult as some of the things I've experienced in the past. And obviously that's not always going to be true for everyone or everything. But I think remembering past experiences and having perspective is really helpful. The second thing she said was, I know that times change. Sorry. These are four powerful little words that lift me up whenever I feel unwell or upset. This too shall pass. I'm not sure who came up with this saying. Some believe it comes from a fable written by Persian and Sufi poets, while others credit it to Jewish folklore and say that it originated from King Solomon. These words remind me that whatever I'm going through in this present moment is temporary. Life plays out in cycles, and time, slowly but surely, passes. Bad times come and then they go. And that reminds me of I shared a quote from Marina Abramovic, the performance artist, last week, I think it was, and it's one of the things that I love that she said in the past, and it always kind of resonates with me. And she says, I'm not attached to a good day or a bad day. I always know that, after the rain, the sun will come. It's something along those lines, but that's something that I kind of hold very dear and I think about a lot. So let me see, where was I? So she says, I only have to hang in there for a certain period of time before a more positive phase comes along. It may take a little time, so I may need to be patient, but it will come. So I'm just going to take a little pause and check in on the comments. So if anybody is new here, please say hello in the chat. I would love to meet you and connect with you because after all, my sessions are around sort of community and building connection. So please feel free to say hi to each other, and I'm sure you'll recognize each other from other lives. So Mel, you said it's a balance between not giving more energy and denial to your feelings. Yeah, exactly. So it's like a balance. So I kind of perceive that, and tell me if I've got it right, that, on the one hand, you want to kind of embrace and acknowledge how you feel and that's valid, but at the same time, not dwelling in the pain or the suffering and not kind of, I guess spiraling is another way I look at it personally, because sometimes I can be in patterns where I'm spiraling and trying not to. And so, yeah. So the fourth thing that this writer, or I guess she's like a holistic coach, but the fourth thing she said in her blog post was, number 4, I remind myself that my emotions are transitory. So that's really powerful for me because I definitely have quite big emotions, and I don't know whether anyone else here does. Feel free to send up some hearts, or say something in the chat if that suits you. But I definitely have quite big emotions. But the thing I'm really glad about is if I'm angry or upset, it passes very quickly. So I often notice. So this writer's saying. I often notice how I can feel really down 1 minute and then feel perfectly fine the next. Emotions are really energy in motion. And that's what, a lot of teachers on here say as well. They arise, work their way through my body, and disappear. That is, if I allow them to. And that's me. I sometimes don't allow things to just, I find it hard to like let go of things or just move on. And that makes it worse for me. I can, and I'm sure we've all had these situations where one small thing happens and we, without meaning to or intending to, kind of let it ruin our day. And retrospectively wish that we hadn't. And we kind of do see or think or feel that we could have handled it differently or responded in a different way. The other part of it, of course, is there's obviously people, and I'm sure it's less so in these kinds of circles and spaces where we're all so kind of self-aware and putting in time and energy and effort to learn and grow in these ways. But, some people don't actually even realize that, oh, I could have let go of this and I made it worse for myself. Because, and, a lot of teachers here talk about this and they talk about it a lot more sort of bluntly than I do, but it's very easy for us to stay in victim mode and blame other people. And that doesn't help us. And actually that can also prolong our suffering, because not only are we holding on to the thing, but we're not giving ourselves a chance to reflect on our role in the situation. We're not having a kind of wider perspective. And when we're in that situation of pain and suffering and victim mode and self-pity, as much as we do get something out of that, which is why we do it, right? We get to feel like we're right, and that's our ego playing a part. But we miss out on a lot as well. We miss out on peace. We miss out on connection. And it's important as well to remember that feelings and thoughts aren't necessarily fact. And I've heard, other people say this on here, and I say it as well. But that's so true and so important. Feelings and thoughts are not fact. So situations can happen and we have our interpretation of them. We have our perspective of them. Sorry if I'm touching the mic and making it an annoying sound for you guys. Let me know if I'm doing that. If my hair is brushing the mic or if I'm touching it and there's like a weird sound, just let me know. But yeah, and it's important for us to be able to kind of hit pause so that some of the emotional response can pass, and also to be able to reflect objectively where we can, to see what is fact and what is feeling or thoughts. So yeah, she was saying, the thing that she just said was, I often notice I can feel really down 1 minute and then perfectly fine the next. Emotions are really energy in motion. They arise, work their way through my body, and disappear. That is, if I allow them to. When I'm struck by a wave of difficult emotions, I focus on my breathing. I take my attention to my feet, ground myself, and wait until the emotion passes. I need to get better at doing that. I will share more about that shortly. But she says it always does, as in the emotion always passes. Sometimes it takes minutes. Sometimes it takes a day or so. I don't allow myself to dwell on and overthink my emotions, because I know the human mind is good at making a problem out of nothing. But on the rare occasion that an emotion is persistent and recurring, I pay attention to it by reflecting on what's going on and then addressing the underlying cause. So that's definitely something that I need to work on, or I could work on, is pausing and letting the intense first wave of emotion pass. Because I think many of us have had situations or experiences where we regret the first thing that we said or did or thought or felt, and it wasn't particularly nice for us or for the other person involved in the situation, right? So that's definitely a really important learning, to be able to pause or let the emotion pass where we can. So the fifth thing that she says is, I look at the situation from a different angle. And that's one of the things that I've talked about before is, changing our perspective, thinking about the other person's context of their life, where they're coming from, what their reference points are. And, are they genuinely out to upset or hurt me? Or are they just doing their best, but their best looks different to mine? Or they have different expectations to me? Or there's been maybe a miscommunication somewhere. So this is what she says. If there is one thing I've learned from my training and client work, it's that two people will never see the world the same way. And how many of us are learning and realizing and acknowledging that more and more, right? We all have our own unique take on reality, so much so that reality doesn't even exist outside our own minds. How I perceive the world is dictated by my thoughts, my beliefs, and my history. How you perceive the world is dictated by your thoughts, beliefs, and history. In times of distress, this knowledge is quite liberating. If I see the world differently to the next person, then when life is getting difficult, it's likely that someone else would perceive my predicament in an entirely different way. What, for example, would the person with a slow, degenerating terminal illness make of my mild dizziness, insomnia, anemia, and fatigue? What would the mother, fleeing war-torn Syria with her children, make of my petty concerns for my children with all of their comforts and stability? What would the person who's recently lost her mum think about my distress over my mum's recent health crisis? And I think she's giving examples that are quite tangible, but that it's even simpler things like, what would any of those people that she references think about me being upset about having a conflict or a fallout with a friend or acquaintance or colleague or whatever, right? So I think perspective is really important. And that's not to say that, and one of the worst things, like when you are feeling upset or stressed or in a difficult headspace, and if someone close to you kind of says to you, and Tracy just said what I was about to talk about, so that's brilliant. We're thinking along the same lines. So, when I would say, let's go say I go talking to my mum or crying to my mum about something that is on my mind or bothering or upsetting me, she would kind of say to me, oh, this isn't a big deal. Like, don't let it affect you. Like, just move on from it in the grand scheme of things in like an hour's time or tomorrow. You're not going to worry about this. Like, it's not important. It doesn't matter. And she is right, objectively, of course. But the thing is that for me, that situation feels like the worst thing in the world in that moment. And that's because my fight or flight response, my stress response is triggered. I genuinely feel under threat, right? Especially if you have anything like anxious attachment, previous trauma, you genuinely feel you can't differentiate between like perceived and real threat very well. So yeah, it's such an interesting way to look at things. And so, what Tracy said is, when I bring this up with others, they say I'm invalidating their suffering. And yeah, I think it's a difficult balance, because obviously when you care about someone and you support them, you obviously don't want them to suffer more than they have to. But I think there's kind of, I'm learning more and more about what Mel Robbins calls let them theory, which is just allowing people to be who they are and do what they want to do and not interfering as much as possible, which is really hard to do. I'd say not interfering is harder than helping or getting involved or supporting someone, because I think as humans, we're obviously social beings. We are designed to care about each other, to support each other, to help each other, even if we've lost sight of that somewhat in the more kind of individualistic world and society we live in today. But if we see somebody hurt or injured, our natural instinct is to help them, right? And especially when we care about somebody, that the volume on that turns up tenfold. So I think it's a difficult thing that we're also trying to like learn or unlearn now as well, of letting people kind of be who they are and deal with things in their own way, even if it's frustrating for us to stand by and watch. So Tanya also said, someone once told me to fall out of love with your thoughts, specifically the thought loops. Yes. And it's, it's not even about, like, I would say that's a really nice way of putting it, but there's also a lot of evidence, and Dr. Joe Dispenza talks about this, that we become addicted to the certain cycles of thinking, the highs and the lows, and the patterns that we have. And we're so used to having those kind of brain chemicals, even if they feel negative and painful, our body's really used to them, our minds are really used to them. So we kind of inadvertently seek out situations that help us perpetuate those things that we've become accustomed to. Let me just catch up on the comments. Hi, Evie. Lovely to see you. Again, if it's anyone's first time here and you want to say hello, please do. We've also got Tracy, who's new, and she is from Melbourne. So Lillian said, yeah, we want to be attuned to. After we've been kind and supportive to someone, there might be an attuned moment. There might be an attuned moment to remind them that everything's going to be okay. Yeah. Because one of the things I feel when I'm in that situation personally, and I'm like venting to somebody I care about, or, I just want a bit of support. I just want to feel kind of seen and heard, and I just want to feel like a sense of empathy and comfort. And I've had a situation recently, actually, on this note, which is interesting, where due to something we were watching on TV, I shared something. Thanks, Evie. Due to something that we were watching on TV, something came up about like childhood trauma that I've experienced, and I shared this with the person I was talking to, and their response really like disappointed and hurt and upset me, because they kind of listened to me and then they said, yeah, like I think the best thing for you to do is just to kind of like just basically forget about it and move on. And that was kind of the gist of it, maybe not quite as blunt as that, but I felt like they were being like dismissive. I felt like there was a lack of empathy. And I was really hurt because, I'd explained that, like, in other situations, or anyone else, and I even Googled it to kind of prove my point, that you'd expect in those kinds of situations, if someone opens up to you about something quite deep and meaningful to them and childhood trauma, that they would say something along the lines of, I'm really sorry that happened to you, or like, I'm really sorry to hear that, or, that must have been difficult or awful or whatever. And I didn't get that response. And I called this person out on it, and because I was upset about it. And they said that, like, but surely all of that goes without saying, which for me, it doesn't. And I think actually the correct, or kind of, objectively like reasonable response is still the things that I just said. But I had to sort of make some level of peace with the fact that not everybody is going to respond in the way that I expect, or that I would want them to. And, it doesn't mean necessarily that they don't care, or that they're like glad that that thing happened to me or whatever, but that's how it can feel sometimes, right? It can you can feel like not supported in the way that you need to be. And I had a similar situation with the same person where when I was made redundant earlier this year over summer, I told them about the situation, and I felt like their response also was a little bit unempathetic. And like, this is someone I'm very close to, so it was kind of a difficult thing for me, because I got loads of like empathy and kindness and warmth from other people, and it's not that they didn't care, but it's just their response is maybe more like practical, or sort of less empathy. Like, basically, I think there's a difference or a lack of like empathy, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they like don't care. It's just they can't. And also the other thing is like, I'm quite a good communicator, but other people might not be on the same wavelength or the same level as me with that. So yeah. Let's see what responses we've got. So Tanya says, we judge ourselves on our intentions, and we judge others by their behavior. It's so hard. Yes. Oh my God, that's wonderful, Tanya. I'm gonna really, really make note of that. And I'm also going to share that again. So we judge ourselves on our intentions, right? So we think that we know what our intentions are. We know that we don't mean like ill, and we're well-meaning, etc. But we judge other people on their behavior rather than their intentions, because we don't always know what their intentions are. Hi, Summer Star. Lovely to meet you. You're from Texas. Amazing. I've got family in Texas, but I've never been. So you are just in the middle of, we've kind of had maybe half an hour of chat around the difference between kind of pain and suffering, and we're basically working through and talking through how we can, without dismissing our feelings or not giving them the due kind of processing that we need, we're kind of we're like exploring and talking about ways that we can limit our suffering as much as we can where it's preventable. So, we're talking about where sometimes we spiral or we have big reactions, and how we can prevent those things, not necessarily just, saying that, oh, everything's sunshine and rainbows, and that we're all like, everything's good all the time, because it's not, but just kind of where we can stay grounded or focused, or kind of, where we can go from there when we have situations that upset us or hurt us or curveballs. So, so what Tanya was saying, which I just think is so profound, is that we judge ourselves on our intentions, because obviously we know what our intentions are, we know where we're coming from, but we judge other people on their behavior, and we don't necessarily always know what their intentions are, where they're coming from. I think that's like such a wonderful, helpful, kind of useful quote or sharing. So thank you, Tanya. Really appreciate that. So Evie asked, yeah, maybe that was how they dealt with their own problems. So I was giving an example of someone where I've kind of opened up to them about things, someone I'm really close to, and I just felt like there was a lack of empathy. And this didn't mean they didn't care about me, but I think it's different communication styles, different reference points, right? And they hadn't experienced any of those types of things before either. So, as an example, I'm not going to share much about the childhood trauma stuff because it was a bit more sort of personal, but on the with the redundancy stuff, when I mentioned that situation to them, one of the things that they said to me was that, I've worked in company, and I actually was in a really positive headspace myself, because I just decided like a week before the redundancies were announced that I wanted to be on Insight Timer talking about these things. And I realized what I'm for, or at least one of the things that I'm on this earth for, is to share my ability and skill sets around, making connections, being kind of social beings, creating community in our lives and around us. And, to give you an example, where I live, and some of you will know this story, but there's a little new cute Halloween development that I'll share. Where I live, there's a little girl in my development who has cancer, and I've befriended her mum and she's 8 years old, and she comes and sees my guinea pigs sometimes, and sometimes we'll play board games or, go to the park or whatever. And her immunity is often quite low. She kind of does go to school where she can, but quite often she needs to kind of just be inside and be sort of safe and sheltered. Now, she spends obviously a lot of time at home. She reads a lot. She watches a lot of TV, and she's been watching a lot of American shows and films and stuff where Halloween's a really big thing. And so in the UK, Halloween's not massive, and also there's all the kind of health and safety stuff around trick-or-treating, like knocking on strangers' doors. So I'm in an apartment building, so typically there aren't like that many houses to kind of knock on doors of. And her mum messaged me today asking if I'm going to be home tomorrow night and if she could come and knock on my door for Halloween. And unfortunately, like, Halloween is my favorite holiday. And, you can see my Halloween nails if you'd like to. These two are my favorite ones. But hi, Catherine. Lovely to see you. Oh, you're so sweet. So, guys, if you don't follow Catherine already, she's one of my favorite teachers on Insight Timer. She was one of the first teachers that really made me feel kind of like welcome and part of the community. And that's kind of the environment and the vibe that I want to create for everyone else. So please give her a follow. She's also got a really great book, which you can find on Amazon. And please come along to one of her live sessions. She's fantastic. And just a little note here, like, all of the teachers on Insight Timer are really lovely people, and we all kind of help and support each other. And it's just such a nice community. And I'm sure all of you that are here kind of are part of it and sort of know the vibe as well. So I was talking about so this little girl, Ashna, she so her mum sent me a message asking if she could come and knock on my door for Halloween for trick or treating. But tomorrow is not only Halloween, but it's also Diwali. So I'm going to be going to. So I love immersive theatre. I'm going to be doing an immersive experience during the day that I go through by myself. It's called The Mannequins. If anyone wants to look it up, it's like Manikins, and it seems quite sort of intense and quite interesting. But I'm all for it. I think it will be like a really kind of special sort of like very immersive and possibly like life transforming experience because it's kind of putting me in a headspace and in a situation that I've never been in. And I think when you do those kinds of things by yourself, they're really helpful and kind of interesting and bring out sides of you and parts of your personality that you haven't necessarily ever had to play with before. And then I'm going to a Halloween grotto, whatever that means. I think it's some sort of maze. There's mixed reviews on that. Some people say it's basically in a space that's the size of like a 1 bedroom flat. Other people say it's like scary and fun. And then I'm going for dinner to like a Nepalese restaurant because it's Diwali tomorrow. So it's kind of Diwali-ween, which I'm not particularly religious, but I grew up in a Hindu family, so Diwali is kind of our main like holiday. So there's kind of, yeah, it was sort of like Christmas and Diwali were like the two main things that we would celebrate. But that's kind of my day tomorrow. So the kind of story I'm getting at here is I'm not home for the trick or treating. Hi Ren, I've just seen your picture kind of scroll along the bottom, and hi Kat as well. I do kind of, the little images are really small, but some of the people on here who I know quite well and have seen quite a lot, I'll know them just from even being able to see the tiny icon from far away. So I'm not home. She can't come to my door to trick or treat, but I run all of our WhatsApp groups for our development. And I put a little message on there saying like, hey, if anybody doesn't mind trick or treating tomorrow, like we've got this girl in the development who can't like go very far because of health issues. I didn't specify what. So if anyone is open to having her knock, like here's her mum's phone number, please drop her a message. And then a couple of other mums in the group who also know Ashna and her mum Alpna said, what did they say? They said that they also would be open to, taking a few of their kids trick-or-treating. There's only like a few kids in the development, not loads. And basically she was like, oh, just put on the group if if we can come and knock on your door. And I thought that's really messy because there's loads of messages on the group, and then if there's just like flats sporadically put in there, and it's not relevant to the other like couple of hundred people that don't have children. So I just created like a shared Google Doc and I put the building names in, and I was just like, at the top I wrote, please put in your flat number, name, and what times that people can come knock on your door if you're open to having trick-or-treaters. And then everybody like filled this out, and someone said on the group as well, they were like, oh, what a lovely, like this is what community is all about. And I just thought that was such a nice thing. So, and especially for Ashna at the moment, because she's in the middle of like her sort of she's in a period where I think they've got to keep her immunity, like be careful with her immunity because it's getting cold. There's a lot of colds and like lurgies flying around. It's nice that she can just kind of trick or treat like locally. So basically she'll have a bunch of houses now, like at least 10 to go to tomorrow, even though I'm not home. And I just think that's a really like lovely thing. So that's kind of my vibe when I talk about caring about kind of community and connection, etc. But where was I? Yeah, so what I was saying was that I can't even remember. Where was I? I was talking about the response I got to the redundancy thing. And yeah, I'm talking about how, sometimes people don't respond in the way that we expect or want them to, and how we can take that personally. And the response that I felt, I was in a really positive mindset when the redundancies got announced, because like a week before I realized that one of my purposes, or like one of my passions, is people, community, building connections. And as a world, and there's loads of evidence to show this, we're lonelier and more isolated than ever. And for those of you who haven't been to my previous sessions, I always give this as an example. even when you go to the store, you interact with the screen most of the time now, instead of like a human person. And that used to just be the case in like grocery shops. Now it's like in clothes stores as well, I see it. So yeah, we're kind of losing all these little instances of like face to face, in person, tangible human connection that we would have previously had. And so that I kind of felt like this was kind of something that called to me, and that, as a world, we kind of need more than ever. And so when the redundancies got announced, I was like, cool. Well, a week ago, I decided I was going to start doing things on Insight Timer. And that's what, I'm excited about it. I feel like that's the next thing I'm going to focus on. And whatever route that ends up taking in terms of, me being able to like monetize it or make a living off of it, I'm not worried about that for now. It's more about me being of a service, helping people kind of, and if I can help like even a few people to feel less isolated or less lonely, or to live their lives in a kind of more connected way, or if I can help encourage or inspire somebody to put themselves out there, or talk to a stranger, or to connect with someone where they might not have before, um I think that's like enough for me. That's important. That makes a huge difference. And the reason that I say that is, there's a lot of evidence around how having meaningful connection and having sort of community around you and good people around you can improve your longevity, lifestyle, health, well-being. But also ultimately, like, we all just want to feel seen and heard and like we matter. And part of the way that we do that is, we've got the kind of false ego versions of it from having jobs and money, etc. But really it's like from connecting with people, from actually being seen and heard, and from feeling like there's people that care about you and love you, right? And people that you can rely on, which a lot of people don't have. And I say that because I've done volunteering in hospitals for many years, doing like hospital radio. And, there's often been patients who are in there for a long time and their family live far away, or they don't have much family. And just us coming and like having a chat to them makes a world of difference. In the same way, I did like volunteering with older people in the local community who are, they're agile, they're lucid, but they're just bored and alone. And so we'd run like social clubs for them, where we'd go to the cinema or go to the pub or like do a quiz. We even went to like a gin distillery once, or we go to art galleries, or do kind of various like art workshops or things like that. And the amount of difference it made to those people, where they had somewhere to go and like things to do. Um, and I think there's loads of people that are in little pockets in the community where they're on their own, or, they don't know how to connect. And so my little like PSA, I guess, is like, wherever you can kind of bring people into the fold, or connect with people, or have a little chat, please do, especially if you're someone that feels comfortable doing that. Because it might be nothing to you, but it can mean loads to someone else. So anyway, I was feeling positive about the redundancy. And oh, you guys are so sweet. Thank you. I'm doing my best, as we all are. But I really like people. So genuinely for me, like, it lights me up doing that, right? And ultimately, like, as much as all of you are saying, yeah, that I'm amazing and I'm a good person, etc., like, loads of people do a lot more than I do, for one thing. And not that I'm minimizing my contribution, but ultimately, I think also there's probably a part of it that comes from some level of ego as well, right? It's like, I get to feel like I'm a good person, and that is a nice feeling. But also, I think the bigger benefit for me with like volunteering and helping others and connecting with people, and listening to their perspectives, is that it takes my focus and my mindset off of like my problems, my pain, my suffering, the loops that are going on in my head. So, that's something that I'd really recommend, and actually is one of the things on the list of tips that I was going to share, which hopefully we'll get through. We've got about half an hour left, so I might run over, or I might have to do like a second session. But I'm really enjoying this. Thanks for being here, guys. And just a little, ad break. If anybody is getting any value from what I'm sharing tonight and wants to support me, obviously any donations, big or small, are very welcome, or medium sized, and very greatly appreciated. They kind of help to support me and to share my work. And you can support either by donating through Insight Timer using the button, But if you're on an Apple device, Apple takes, I think, 30% of the donations. So there's other ways to support me via PayPal, and you can find the link in my bio for that. So if you don't want Apple to take a cut, but whatever's easier for you, if you plan to support me, I'm not kind of precious about it. And other ways that you can support me is by following me here, and then also subscribing to my YouTube channel, which currently is mainly recordings of this, but I'm also creating a lot more kind of short form content, and as and when I have the capacity and the kind of time, I'll be putting more and more things on there as well. But I've got a goal to reach 500 subscribers on there. So if anyone can help with that by sharing, subscribing, please do. Those are kind of the non-monetary ways that you can support me. And then, the thing I was, the point I was kind of sharing about was the, and Mel, if you can just pop the name in the chat, that would be helpful. It's Priyanka Rose 1111 for anyone who doesn't know, like the numbers 1111. And it's basically, I mean, you can do it right now if you wish to. But it's 1111 like angel numbers, and Priyanka Rose like my name on here. But all one word. That's my kind of YouTube handle. So yeah, Mel, if you could pop it in as one word for anyone so they can copy and paste it. Thank you, Kat. I really appreciate that. So I was just saying that I was in a good headspace. I felt positive about the redundancy. I hadn't been happy in that role. I felt like I was swimming upstream for the last year. I'd enjoyed it for the last 6 years before that, but then things had shifted quite a lot, and it became, more about sort of numbers and kind of cold email outreach than it was previously about having genuine connection and relationships with clients. So, and I'm not here, and that's not what I'm for. I'm not kind of designed to just send 2,000 cold emails a day via software, right? And I feel when I'm doing this, I feel like I'm in flow. I feel like I'm really enjoying it, and I feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing. So I had no resistance to the redundancy. I had no hesitation. I was feeling excited about the thing that I had planned next. And then I spoke to this person who's very close to me in my life, and I said, this is I was like, oh, I've got this to say. And I kind of had a suspicion that they wouldn't respond or react in a way that I would be amenable to. So I gave them the heads up that I was like, I don't want advice. I don't want kind of input. I just want you to sort of listen and be supportive. But unfortunately, they didn't quite get the memo in the way that I intended them to. And basically, one of the things that they said to me was that they said, I would be upset if I was you. And they said something like, I went into the conversation feeling really good about this, right? And so they kind of said to me, they were like, oh, I've never been through this myself, but I've been in loads of jobs where other people have been made redundant, and they've all been really stressed or upset about it. And I just that, it was that, and it was a few other things that they said, and I just thought wow, what a rubbish response. And it just made me feel like they weren't being supportive, and they kind of were handling it or responding to me really badly, and I took it quite personally as well. And and it's obviously they didn't mean it like that. They didn't have bad intentions. It's just kind of what came out of their mouth. So when we talk about kind of perspectives and things like that, there you go. So we were just basically talking about looking at the situation from another angle. And then number 6 from this same blog post, and for those of you who've missed the kind of previous ones, one of the big things we shared was that the quote, which I don't know who it's from, but it's pain is inevitable but suffering is optional. And another quote that says, it isn't the things and this is from Pema Chodron, so it isn't the things that happen to us in our lives that cause us to suffer. It's how we relate to the things that happen to us that cause us to suffer. And obviously, we established that's good news, because it means that we have the potential to change how we perceive the things and the situations that upset us, and to, we can potentially put a cap on how much suffering we experience, even if the situations or the things that have happened to us are very real, and we're not diminishing them. But we can sometimes stop ourselves from like spiraling further or making it feel or be worse for ourselves. So, and the kind of 5 points we'd shared so far were that know that times change and, things pass. Questioning whether the issue will trouble you in the future. I don't know if I covered that actually. So I question whether the issue will trouble me in the future. Is what I'm going through really going to be an issue in a week, a month, a year, or a decade from now? Is the issue really going to be troubling me at the end of my life? Or because I believe in reincarnation, that's what the person said, but I also do believe in reincarnation. Is the situation going to be a concern a few lifetimes down the line? When I ask myself these questions, the answer is always no. I've yet to discover an issue that doesn't lose its negative hold over me when I start thinking from this vantage point of eternity. So the other kind of 2 points that I'd covered were I remind myself that emotions are transitory, and we talked about how it's great if you can kind of pause and let the emotion pass before you respond, instead of just like leaning into the reaction and going like rah, straight away at whatever's just happened. And I don't know why I did the little dinosaur roar. I was spending time with there's another neighbor that I'm very close to, and they're like family to me, and they've got a 3-year-old, and they'd been away for quite a bit, and they came back a few weeks ago, and I'm very close with their daughter, and like I'm basically an aunt to her, and so I was spending time with her, and we're playing with like a dinosaur toy and stuff. So that's probably left over from earlier today. And then the other one was I look at the situation from a different angle, and this is what we just talked about. And then this last one is I reflect on my place in the cosmos. So I remind myself at the end of the day, my life is actually pretty insignificant in the grand scheme of things, and so am I. Is it really worth stressing over the little things when my entire life wouldn't even register as a flashlight on the continuum of human existence observed over time? If I continue to see things from higher and higher vantage points, I soon arrive at the understanding that I'm not really that important at all. It's just that my ego likes to believe that I am. I'm one person in a city of 8.7 million, in a country of 65.5 million, in a world of 7.5 billion. From an even wider perspective, I'm a tiny speck on a planet orbiting a star, which is one of 100 billion stars in just our galaxy alone. That's a lot of numbers, isn't it? It's a little bit overwhelming. Scientists estimate that there are around 100 billion. It was written out in numbers, and luckily she'd put it in words in the brackets. Scientists estimate that there are around 100 billion galaxies in the known universe, as far as current telescopes can detect. In the vastness of the universe, I barely register at all. You might find this stuff pretty depressing, but I find it invigorating. What's the point of sweating the small stuff when it simply doesn't matter? Hi, Champa. Lovely to have you here. Welcome, welcome. We're just talking about, ways that we can prevent or sort of alleviate some of our suffering that's kind of self-inflicted, or where, there's things that we can do to get out of our suffering quicker than we do, and, habits that we can break or patterns that we can sort of improve on, I guess. So yeah, here's how I make sense of it all. I have a very short time on this planet, too short to be worrying about silly things that will shortly be of no concern. At any given time, it's impossible that I'm the only one going through a difficulty. In fact, my life is incredibly good when compared with the vast majority of others on this planet. And I think that's true, right? For most of us, we've got time of a morning or an evening or an afternoon, depending on where you are, to be here together on Insight Timer and kind of, sharing in this knowledge and this information. Like most of us are doing all right. We have enough. We're safe. We're well. We've probably been able to eat today. So yeah, the iPad just locked itself. So let me get it back. So yeah, our life is incredibly good when compared to the vast majority of others. I have a healthy body. I'm surrounded by people I love. I have the privilege of doing meaningful work. I have a smart mind. I can learn and grow. I can do fun things and I'm free. Yes, shit happens every now and again. I get sick. I get ratty. People I love get sick. Everyone does. But it's entirely my choice whether I wallow in it or I get up and get over it. So yeah, that was all from the bits that I've shared so far. I was reading kind of a blog post from someone called Harinda Gatora, and I really liked her energy, and I just thought um, I didn't want to kind of recycle what she'd said in a way where I liked the way she kind of shared, and I quite often read from other books and things. So why not give someone a shout out and share from her blog? And it was so relevant, right? And let me just see if there's any comments that I'm missing out on. So, Cat Blue said, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. A popular quote voiced by Dalai Lama, Haruki Murakami, and Kathleen Casey. Yeah, so there's a few of them. There's a few people that have kind of quoted that. And for anyone who doesn't know Catherine, who Joe's just mentioned, give her a follow. She's one of my favorite teachers on here, and one of the kind of first teachers that I ever felt a personal connection to. Her kind of sort of affirmations and meditations are just beautiful. And there's a really lovely group of us that kind of go and listen to her live as well. And so I'm quite often on her lives if they're not too late for me, or if I'm not out and about. But so I hope to see all of you there. And if you don't already follow myself or Catherine and any of the other teachers on here, please give us a follow. That's a really nice way to support us. And come along to more of my lives. I do one a week. It's usually between Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday most of the time, at 9 p.m. So yeah, keep an eye out. And I try to mix it up so that different people can come when they're free, but also depending on what else I have going on as well. Because at the moment, for those of you who don't know, I'm not currently in full-time employment since I was made redundant, but I'm volunteering on this giant community theatre kind of project, and it's honestly the best, most exciting thing I've ever been involved with. But it's very, very busy. We're getting close to the show kicking off, and so things are getting very real. And the kind of area that I'm involved with and looking after is meaning that at the moment I'm meeting lots of people who are kind of similarly minded like we are. They're sort of somewhat spiritual or interested in sort of growth and personal development, and more kind of esoteric, or some of them refer it to as all that hippie stuff. That's all of our favorite insight timer themes and stuff. So I'm meeting lots of people doing really cool things in that space, and I just think it's going to be a really interesting and transformational time. So yeah, the other I had a kind of list of a bunch of other things that can help us to kind of alleviate suffering or improve our suffering, or if we're struggling or having a bad moment or a bad day, here are some of the things that we can consciously think about doing. So showing gratitude, first of all, many of you know about this, and for anybody who doesn't, I would recommend having a gratitude practice. So whatever that looks like for you, some people prefer to say it out loud, some people prefer to kind of journal. I personally journal, and for the last probably 12, 13 years, I've written down what I'm grateful for at the end of each day. Sometimes I miss a day and then I'll catch up on 2 days worth. So for example, last night I was too tired to do it. So tonight I've got a double whammy. I've got to fill in and remember what happened yesterday, but also today. And that really shifts your focus, because whatever you focus on, you get more of. So when you're focusing on all the positives, all the nice things that happen in your day, your week, your month, your year, you're going to get more of the same. Evaluating your perspectives. We've covered that, haven't we? So yeah, having a different perspective or looking at things from a different perspective, maybe trying to put yourself in the other person's shoes if there is someone else involved, can be helpful. Helping others. We talked about that organically as well, right? That came up in kind of the volunteering that I've been doing historically, has really helped me in my own life. So it's, oh, Mel, you're so sweet. I'm grateful for you as well. I'm grateful for all of you. And Cat Blue said, I love saying thank you in the moment, including the little things. I do the same. Like people close to me sometimes say like stop saying thank you or saying thank you too much, but I don't care. I don't think you can say thank you enough or too much. I think people are just not used to it sometimes. Um, but I'd rather say, but I also say sorry too much, which I shouldn't do, and that's probably a hangover from like childhood stuff. Childhood conditioning for like getting told off for the littlest things. But saying thank you, I will continue to do as much as I can. And also, I think like complimenting people or being kind and saying nice things when you notice something about someone or you appreciate something about someone, actually communicating that out loud, even if it feels like a weird or random thing to do. No one ever sort of has a bad response to that. Generally, they might try and minimize and be like, no, no, like I'm not like good at this, or like, oh, I found this in the back of my cupboard or whatever. But generally speaking, um, it feels good to give people positive, nice feedback, and it also feels nice to receive it, even if you're a bit uncomfortable about it. And we've covered it before. A couple of people on here have said that they feel awkward when they're like complimented, or when people like respond to them in that way. So, showing gratitude, evaluating your perspectives, helping others, we covered. So for me, helping others has really helped me to get out of my headspace and what I'm spiraling about, focusing on, dwelling on. It helps me to kind of channel that energy in a productive way, or at least like compartmentalize and park it, and then I can worry about it later. Getting in a workout, obviously, the other way of looking at this is changing your physiology. So going for a walk, working out, if you're sitting down, standing up, and vice versa, having a cold or hot bath or shower, because that changes, the way your body's feeling and what you're experiencing. So that can help to like kind of get you out of the headspace that you're in of suffering and dwelling on things. Looking for something positive, which I feel again is like gratitude can help with that, but also just kind of finding something positive to do or watch or listen to. There's a podcast that I really love. I love food, I love comedy, and there's my favorite podcast is called Off Menu by Ed Gamble and James Acaster, and it is the best podcast I've ever listened to, and that it makes me just laugh out loud. It makes me feel really good, and you get to hear about like delicious food. And yeah, it's just a very lovely, light, fun thing to have a listen to. What are the other things? So think of the bigger picture, which I think also relates to kind of the perspective thing, and also the cosmos comment that everybody kind of, can zoom out a little bit and realize that we're a tiny dot in the grand scheme of things. And whatever happens in a particular moment, or even if it's something that lasts for a couple of years, like that's such a small amount of time in the grand scheme of the rest of our life, the rest of like history and the universe, right? And again, part of that as well is like, is it going to bother you in a year, in a week, in a month, in a year, in like 10 years time when you're reaching the end of your life? Are you still going to be thinking about this one thing that you're hyper focused on now? Like probably not most of the time. Smile is another one which I think is lovely. I think it's hard for me to smile when I'm having a particularly bad time, but I think, yeah, actually, that's a lie, because if I walk past someone and they smile at me, I would smile back regardless of what kind of day I'm having, unless it really catches me off guard. But even having that little exchange does actually help. And that's kind of why also I care about community and connection, and I'm doing this, because even those little micro interactions where, like, as you step out of the lift, you say to your neighbor, have a good night, that makes a difference, right? Compared to just having an awkward silence and like looking at the floor waiting for your floor to arrive. Stop thinking in terms of should is one of the points that we have, which I think is a brilliant one, right? So, and I do that. I'm like, this person should have done this. This person should have said this. This person should have. If you could have done this, then I wouldn't have reacted. Blah blah blah. And I think could and should are interchangeable in this example. So stop thinking and feeling in terms of should and could is what I'm going to call that one. And change your environment. So we've talked about this before, and Joe Dispenza talks about this a lot. Is that part of the reason that we find it hard to break old habits and we end up in the same cycles and patterns isn't a lack of discipline, it isn't a lack of willpower. It's the fact that if we're in the same environment, our kind of we have a lot of like reference points around us and things that help us to habituate into like what we do. Like, we wake up at the same time in the same bed and we end up drinking coffee out of the same mug every morning, and then we pretty much do the same things in the same spaces. So breaking out of that, going into a different place, that's why I like travel, or let's say going for a walk or getting kind of outside of your comfort zone, can help with rewiring your brain and therefore helping to break your thought processes and patterns that we have on default. And I say default because they're default. I say default like default because they're defaults that we've created, but we can always create a new default. And that's what we're all here trying to do, presumably. So yeah, change your environment. That's an important one. I said that. So right, the thing I was going to say about that is like now with me working on this show, it's quite hands-on now. It's getting busier. I'm going to be around lots of new people on a consistent basis, and it's really exciting. But that's a good time now for me to kind of change my thinking, change my behaviors, change my habits, because I'm doing different things, and so my mind is more plastic. And what I mean by plastic is moldable, right? So anytime you're in a kind of transition phase of life, if you're moving house or changing job, that's a good time to also try and change up some of your habits and routines and other things as well. Just in terms of, from the way that neuroscience and wiring of the brain works. So let's see. Embrace change is another one. I'm not going to dwell on that one too much, but yeah, being open to change. Oh, I say I wasn't going to dwell on it, but I will share what my initial thoughts are. Being open to change, being kind of looking for the gifts in that situation, and yeah, making the best of it, right? Instead of like, oh no, this thing happened, like what am I going to do now? It's just like embracing it and moving forward instead of this. I mean, this kind of applies to everything else that we've said about where we dwell on things and sort of suffer. Just going to catch up on the comments. So, and take a breath. I need to remember to do that more when I'm doing my lives. So please remind me, those of you who are my regulars, please do remind me to take a breath. So, yeah, Catherine's got some great new tracks that I've been listening to. So, Catherine, I was walking home yesterday, and this is a good example. There was a situation that annoyed me a little bit. Basically, somebody said that they were going to call me at a certain time, and I was expecting to have that conversation while I walked home, because that's the only window of time that I had to have that conversation. And they said, oh, I'll call within like 20 minutes, and that 20 minutes had passed. And I was a bit annoyed. I was like, oh, I'm not going to be able to speak later when I get in. There's something else that I want to listen to on Insight Timer. So, it's annoying that this person said they would call me and then didn't. And instead of, typically I would have maybe gotten annoyed about it, or maybe sent like a slightly passive aggressive message, or been like, I don't know, just been internally like annoyed about it. But instead, I listened to Catherine has like an abundance or money kind of affirmation, a new one that's like 8 minutes long, I think 7-8 minutes. And I put that on, and I was just like, no, I'm in a good place. Like, I'm thinking about this, I'm in this energy. And it like really stopped me from spiraling, or like basically getting all like annoyed and spiraling and getting worse at that in my head. So Cat Blue, you said, oh yeah, I read your comment already. So Mel, you said, I'm grateful for Insight Timer and all the teachers sharing their time and knowledge. And thank you. And all the teachers are grateful for all of you as well. Like Catherine will echo me on that. But yeah, Catherine said, I think we're also grateful for Insight Timer for this wonderful community. Like, I'm grateful for all the teachers too, because I go to a lot of sessions, and that's how I first came across Insight Timer. I was on the other side for years, just listening. And it's kind of wonderful to be on both sides of it. But I'm a big fan, a big advocate of Insight Timer. Anyone I meet who I think could be interested in it, I tell them about Insight Timer. I kind of share it, and I tell them about the sort of premium as well. So Cat Blue said, Ari, I'm sorry. As an old habit, an IT friend I asked suggested. and the monkey one, and yeah, that's so nice. So what another option is, so another option that I've heard that's like apparently a really powerful thing to like say or do is to say, um, like instead of if you're late to meet somebody, instead of saying like sorry to keep you waiting, it's being like thank you for waiting for me, and framing things in that light where you can. I can't believe you said oopsie daisy instead of saying I'm sorry. Yeah, that's really nice and really sweet. So Cat Blue also said shoulda feels like a poop emoji on self or others. Yeah, it does, doesn't it? And Peter Brook says, or Lauren says, good music helps me to change the soundtrack of my life. Yeah, and also, we love like all of the amazing musicians we have on Insight Timer, like Rob and Blossom Violet, and there's a few others as well. But those are my two favorite, or like I guess the musicians that I go, whose sessions I go to the most, and who I have the most like connection to with everyone in the room, and they're like I'm one of their regulars, where I can be based on time differences. And Michelle said, yes, all things must change and we with them. Yeah, exactly. So true. So where are we on the list? Change your environment was the last one we covered. Embrace change we had as well. Set goals. So this is an interesting one because I don't have much kind of experience with this in terms of me being able to share loads about it tangibly. But I have heard people say that if you set yourself like a big goal, like let's say to run a marathon or a specific measurable goal, that something that you can focus on and work towards, that will help to boost your kind of self-confidence, your self-worth, your self-esteem, and also give you a way to like channel energy. Because when you've got kind of your own focus, something that's for you that you're um passionate about or kind of committed to, it helps you to take some of the energy off of like other people, other situations, things that you can't control. So that, as I understand it, is kind of my interpretation um of the set goals. And also, for those of you who know anything about guinea pigs, pumpkin was just popcorning. So basically, popcorning is a thing that piggies do when they're really happy or really excited. They just kind of jump around. It's like they look like they're having a seizure, or what you'd imagine to be a seizure. Although one of my guinea pigs actually has epilepsy, and when he is having a seizure, it looks nothing like popcorning. But they basically imagine this the guinea pig. They'll just kind of fly around in the air, like just really excited, and they'll kind of sometimes just jump into like walls and the sides of their space and stuff because they're that excited. It's like if you like the way that kids kind of jump for joy, it's like that, but uncontrollable. And if that kid was like weightless and could just kind of fly around, um, yeah, it's really funny and really cute, and they make a really like sweet sound when they do it. I might try and put a video of pumpkin popcorning on my link tree or on my YouTube. So, for those of you who missed this, my little PSA: if you have gained any value from what I've shared so far, and we've still got a few things that we're going to end on, I would very, very much welcome and appreciate any donations that you're able to make. Like even the little, I think $1.99 or whatever is the smallest one, is really helpful and supportive in helping me continue my work, helping me feel appreciated, and also, as I mentioned, I'm just kind of mainly working on a voluntary basis at the moment. I'm not, and that's going to be pretty much full time until the end of January at least. So this is kind of my main source of income at the moment. It helps me to kind of get better equipment and stuff, and just means that I can do these lives. But if you're not in a position to make a donation, other ways that you can support me are following me here on Insight Timer, which you can do kind of right now while we're on the live. And you can also follow me and subscribe to me on YouTube, because I've got a goal to reach 500 subscribers on there, and I'm going to be posting other content, shorter form, like tips and little bits of wisdom, some of the stuff that we have from here. But you can also find my previous lives all uploaded there as well. And we talk about, there's various kind of themes and stuff, and I need to fill in what they are and put in the descriptions and stuff, which I haven't done yet. So the last one we had was set goals. We've got 5 minutes. I'm going to kind of rattle through the rest, but if there's any that are major and not really self-explanatory, we'll flesh them out a bit. But take a nap was one of the big ones. Not one of the big ones, one of the small ones, but yeah, taking a nap, like making sure that you've got enough rest, I would say, sleeping well at night. But yeah, just having a little rest and a lie down, and if you can, having a nap. I always find that the moment that I saw waking up as a kind of and going to sleep as like a way of hitting the reset button, that was really powerful for me, because I was like, even if I've had a bad day, if I go to sleep and I wake up the next morning, I'll inevitably feel a little bit better than I did the day before. It kind of gives you that space or that pause or that distance from whatever's going on. Take care of yourself. We don't need to talk about this. We're all here. We all understand self-care. Maybe that's another one that I'll kind of focus on in a separate session, but we've got limited time. Reframing, which we can probably talk more at length about that, but I think again, we've covered it with shifting your perspective and things like that. Distancing yourself from negativity. Guys, give me 1 second. I will be right back. Just stay on the line. Give me a moment. I don't want to just rush through the others, so just give me 1 second. Hi, I'm back. Thank you for bearing with me. Yeah, I just thought I've got a couple of minutes left. I might go over, so I just had to sort something out. Yeah. My mic was on perfectly earlier. I can't get it to go back on now. Okay, there we go. So yeah, I think we can do another live on kind of reframing and distancing from the negative. And actually, it's funny that you said the thing about distancing, because I think that was one of the points. Yeah, so actually, maybe I read that, but yeah, reframing, distancing yourself from the negativity. So that might be in the form of a person, it might be in the form of an environment, right? So that's, ways that you can sort of reduce or improve suffering. If you know that, let's say, spending time with a particular person doesn't feel good for you, don't put yourself in that situation as often or for as long. Of course, there are obviously times where, let's say, with family or other obligations or commitments, you can't completely avoid somebody. But if you can limit the time and energy that you give to it or spend with them, that's never going to be a bad thing. And where are we on the list? Managing your expectations. Gosh, what a juicy one that we're only reaching at the end. I think we've touched upon it briefly in some of the other points, right? So managing my expectations for me is a really, really big one that I need to get better at. I think I expect so much from other people because I give so much. And when my expectations aren't met, I am disappointed. I feel kind of hurt and disappointed because, certain things feel like the most obvious thing in the world to me. Like, oh, if this person cared about me, like obviously they would do or say this thing. But it's not as straightforward as that. And as I think it was it Tanya that communicated the little gem from this session that I loved. She basically said, and I can't scroll up far enough to find it now, but I'm sure it was her. So she said, which honestly, like for me, it's just like, wow, like mind blown. She says, we judge ourselves based on our intentions, but we judge other people based on their behavior. So we know where we're coming from. We know that we're well-intentioned for the most part. Well, most of us on here are. And we kind of know that we're doing okay and we're like doing, we're coming from a good place. But hi, Ega, lovely to see you. Did you just join now? So yeah, we know that we're coming from a good place, but even if the other person is also coming from a good place, we can't necessarily see or feel, or like, we don't know for sure that that was their intention. So we just go off of not only their behavior, but their interpretation, our interpretation, sorry, of their behavior. So, what Tanya was saying was, like, just in a nutshell, was we judge others. Sorry, let me try again. I can't read it because it's not there anymore, but we judge ourselves based on our intentions, and we judge others based on their behavior. And I just think that is like super profound, and yeah, just really, really like, like, that's the truth bomb right there. I've done a lot of sound effects on this live today. I mean, I've done two. I've done, like, I feel like a dinosaur, and also that explosion sound. I definitely do not have a career in, like, voice acting in that sense, sound effects. Luckily, we have computers and AI to do all of that. So let me see. Let me catch up on the comments. So Cat Blue says the best expectations are no expectations. Yeah, but I don't know if I'll ever get to a point where I have no expectations. We can see we're trying, we're growing. But yeah, managing my expectations, it's a difficult one, because I want to be open and positive and optimistic, and I believe in manifestation, but also I think I don't want to be entitled or be disappointed or feel let down because I've built something up in my head. Like, I can give you an example that actually, no, I'm going to save the example for another time, because we are running to time. So accepting yourself is another one. So as a tonic for alleviating suffering, accepting yourself. And I think this would be one that's a bit of a can of worms. If I started talking about that, we'd be here for a lot longer. But take it at sort of the Cliff Notes version for now. But the more we can accept ourselves, the easier it is for us to kind of be coming from a place of, like, positivity, confidence, and hopefully acting in a way that is the most, like, loving and wholesome, and has our long-term best interests and our long-term well-being in mind, right? If we truly accept ourselves, love ourselves, we're gonna want to take as best care of ourselves as we can, both mentally and physically, and emotionally, which means that we might not want to stay in a state of suffering or spiraling, or hold on to the pain longer than we need to. And also, like, knowing that we're better than that. We're not just victims. Focusing on the needs of others, but I think for me personally, I feel like we've covered that with helping others. However, obviously, I have anxious attachment, and I've been part of a community that kind of helps to work through that. And one of the things that always comes up is that, part of the reason that people with anxious attachment really, like, struggle is that because we're so used to, like, maybe not having our needs met or being hurt or whatever, that we are hyper focused on our needs in a relationship as opposed to other people's or our partners. So it can come across as us being, like, selfish or self-interested, or not thinking about what our partner needs or wants. But actually, what it's about us feeling seen and heard, and it's about us getting validation from having our needs met, or that, like, feeling like, oh, our partner kind of cares about us, basically. Keep your head up is another one, which I think is, we've talked about, look on the brighter side of life, and, like, find the silver lining and smile and stuff. So yeah, that kind of comes into that. And practicing mindfulness, which all of us here do or try to do, as in my case. I'm just not consistent enough with meditation and mindfulness, if I'm being honest. But I'm trying to do more things where I'm in flow energy, so that I'm kind of switching off and, like, focusing on one thing at a time. So today I kind of decided to take my time having a coffee and reading. I only lasted about 10 minutes before I got up and did the vacuum, and then I read a bit more. Because I always feel like I should be doing something, right? Or I always feel like there's something to do or that I need to get done. And so, yeah, like that, did all of that. And then what else happened today? And then I went to the pool and I kind of thought, oh, I'm gonna swim, and I swam for a bit, and then I just sort of stopped and just did some stretching, and I thought, as long as I'm feeling relaxed and calm and sort of regulated, that's what's important to me right now. That's why I'm here. I'm here to kind of just switch off and relax, regardless of how much I swim or don't swim or whatever else. I did like 500 meters of swimming as well, because I am trying to be sort of mindful and, better with being consistent with exercise. But aside from that, it was mainly, I was like focused on just kind of, relaxing and really like being present and slowing down a bit. And then turning your inner monologues positive was the last point. So we all talk about these things, we have loads of like lives and things where we speak about other teachers talk on lives around like positive self-talk and not being like sort of quietening our inner critic, or kind of reworking some of those beliefs and things like that. So yeah, that's kind of the comprehensive list that I'd prepared, and I think we've just about hit time. Does anybody have any final kind of thoughts or questions? And I will just have a quick skim of the comments and catch up. So Capley says, I try to remember that acceptance is not condoning it, does not mean you approve or like what it is, but it does help during clarity rather than going to those old negative habits and neural pathways. Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone who's new here, thank you so much for joining. I hope that you got some value from this session, and I hope that you guys will come back and maybe connect with each other as well. If anyone has any particular kind of feedback or anything they want to share with me, feel free to do so in the chat now or drop me a message. As I mentioned, any donations are more than welcome, but otherwise you can support me by following me as a teacher on Insight Timer and also subscribing to my YouTube channel. So yeah, that's kind of everything from my end, and thank you for your time, guys. And if you have an iPhone and or an Apple device and you don't want Apple to take the 30% cut for when you make donations, you can donate to me via my PayPal account. So I've got a link in my bio, and there's a way to support me there. So Catherine's comment just got deleted. So yeah, fair enough. I think that's probably from the kind of moderators. But yeah, thank you guys. Thank you for your support. Is Catherine, are you still here? I hope you didn't get kicked out for saying that. I think they just have moderators that basically try to keep things kind of clear to hear. Not always the case, so it's fine. Don't worry, Catherine, it's all good. We're all human. Oops a daisy, exactly. But thank you guys, and I'm gonna sign off now. But if anyone wants to follow me here, please do, and keep an eye out for my lives. I think the one that I'll do next week will probably be on Wednesday. So hope to see you then. And please follow Catherine, please follow all of the other teachers that are on here, and share our kind of tracks and our lives with people who you think will enjoy it as well. Thank you, Lauren. So yeah, everybody have a happy Halloween tomorrow if you celebrate, or if you kind of are into Halloween, and also have a really nice Diwali as well if you celebrate it, or eat some Indian food if not, if you feel like doing something for it. Thank you guys, and good night. Bye. Oh yeah, I could leave a bowl of treats on my door. Mel, that's a great idea. I'm gonna think about doing that if I have time for it to head out tomorrow. Thank you. That's such a good idea. Thank you, Mel. Bye. Good night, everyone. Have a great Halloween. Have a great Diwali. And have a great week until we meet next time.